Maybe it's time to let the old ways die.
I can tell you for a fact that's not really Bradley Cooper playing and singing at the same time. You gotta acknowledge that they're not showing his hands that much. Hey, what's up you guys? Marty Schwartz here. I'm a guitar teacher on a YouTube channel called Marty Music where I talk about all things guitar. Today we're gonna check out some iconic clips featuring the guitar in film and TV. So let's check them out.
I heard you in music class. You guys can really play.
Being such a big fan of this movie, I know that they cast the kids specifically for different musical talents that they have.
You pluck along with me, okay? If you can.
He's playing the song Iron Man, which is actually in a higher key that's harder to play. But as a beginner, that's a little challenging. So as a guitar teacher, we like to use the open string. And that's not how it really goes, but you can still recognize it and learn it. This scene checks out 100% authenticity, seal of approval.
Maybe it's time to let the old ways die.
Now in this particular scene, I can tell you for a fact that's not really Bradley Cooper playing and singing at the same time. You gotta acknowledge that they're not showing his hands that much. Now he is playing the chord shapes right, but that actual, perfect articulation of a performance is definitely pre-recorded. That is actually Lukas Nelson playing the guitar. But Bradley Cooper really did learn and practice guitar for this movie. Now with a small club show, that intimacy is part of the magic. You're hanging on every word of that artist, and then it's really quiet in between the music. So it's just a totally different experience as opposed to a big outdoor show. Bradley Cooper is on tour. He actually hung out and shadowed Eddie Vedder. One of the big pieces of advice Eddie Vedder gave Bradley Cooper was to don't choke up so high on the guitar because it just doesn't look cool. Something I see specifically that probably non-guitar players won't see, the way a really experienced guitar player holds a pick, it looks effortless. I see, as a guitar teacher, some of that awkwardness. This scene checks out. I would give it a 75% authenticity mark. He's surrounded by true, real musicians, which helps a lot.
All right, guys, listen, this is the blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
This is interesting. This scene is really right on the verge of rock and roll. There's already music during this time that is that progression. But what happened with rock and roll is it just got a little bit faster, a little bit louder, a little bit raunchier. Most blues is based in what's called a 12-bar blues, and he calls out the key. So it is actually realistic to just shout out to musicians, we're going to play a blues in the key of B. I'm going to play the opening riff, so follow along, if you can, for the changes. And so he takes the key that I'm talking about, B here, and he plays a blues riff, which I think I can do. So it's a set of 3 chords known as the 12-bar blues, and it just repeats over and over and over.
Johnny be good.
Chuck, it's Marvin, your cousin Marvin Berry.
Keith Richards said another word for rock and roll could be Chuck Berry. So they take that and they literally mess with the time paradox where Marty McFly is playing the first rock and roll. Marvin Berry hears it and calls his cousin Chuck Berry. When that phone hangs up, Chuck Berry is actually going to go write Johnny B. Good.
You know that new sound you looking for?
He is playing a Gibson ES-345, which didn't come out till a few years after 1955. This is actually what they wanted him to be playing, and they made a mistake. This is a Gibson ES-335. Now, it's not really Michael J. Fox playing, but he's done enough practice to really look like he knows what he's doing. This scene checks out. It's inspired as many guitar players as any movie I've ever talked to anyone about. For that alone, it gets 110% authenticity, and Michael J. Fox did an amazing job.
I wrote a song about you.
You did?
Yeah, it goes like this.
One thing that encapsulates the being a young musician is that it's all about this girl that he likes. And I think a lot of guitar players can relate to learning guitar to impress someone that they like. Now, something cool about this movie, which is like School of Rock, is that everyone really plays their instruments in this film. One of the reasons I think he's been playing a while is because he's doing some things that are beyond that beginner level, which are called bar chords. You have to have been playing as a beginner for a while before you can play the bar chords like this. And to just kind of the way the pick was holding in his hands, it looked like he had done it thousands of times. This scene absolutely checks out. It's about as authentic as you can get.
The onus fell on me, the teacher, to lead the troops to victory from the sidelines.
Now, when you have 4 different guitar players, they're not all going to be playing the same thing. Typically, if you have a chord, the musicians are going to divide up the individual notes of that chord. So if you have one guitar player playing a chord, it sounds like that. But if you have 4 guitar players, one guitar player may play that note alone. The other guitar player may play that note alone. The other guitar player plays. Well, I used to teach a lot of little kids and put little rock bands together. And I would be, without playing, very similar to this clip, I would be there with them and conducting and having to point at when their guitar solo is and literally change the effects on their amps. It looks like the actress Anjana Vasan is really playing the guitar in this scene. Everything she was doing there looked like a very experienced, classically trained guitar player. This scene absolutely checks out, right down to that feeling of nervousness that I was feeling for her. And her guitar playing was absolutely authentic and real and way beyond beginner. Now in this scene, Ralph Macchio is playing slide guitar, which is a very unique blues style of playing. And it's a very difficult style of playing. I can tell Ralph Macchio practiced this piece as a real piece because he is in all the right spots on the neck. But it's an amazing guitar slide master, Ry Cooder, playing for real. If Ralph Macchio could really play like that, he wouldn't be an actor, he'd be a musician. And blues itself, it has an heavy emotional resonance to it. And so musically, that uses what are typically called minor keys and a specific set of notes called the minor pentatonic scale. Now, that's what he's playing in that piece. But the way I'm playing that there is I'm using the frets, which makes each note perfect when I hit it. With the slide guitar in that scene, there are no frets being used at all. He's not even pressing down. The slide runs along the strings and changes the pitch. So it's much more similar to someone's vocal sounds and vocal chords. Later on in the movie, you've got obviously Steve Vai there in character as the Devil's guitar player. Ralph Macchio versus the Devil. Make no mistake, when you cut to the climax and that amazing guitar part, you are not going to see Ralph Macchio's head and arms at the same time. All of a sudden, Ralph Macchio's fingers are like 3 inches longer. That's because it's not him playing. I'm pretty sure that that's Steve Vai. But then there's also a guitar player, Arlen Roth, who is doing elements of it as well. This scene checks out. It's not necessarily all Ralph Macchio playing, but it's all the top musicians at the time doing what they do best.
Excalibur.
Wow. 64 Fender Stratocaster classic white with triple single coil pickups and a whammy bar.
Pre-CBS Fender corporate buyout.
I'd raise the bridge, file down the nut, and take the buzz out the low E.
God, I love this woman.
Typically, you're not going to see this crazy valuable of a guitar in just a random guitar shop. You're also not going to see it in a glass case like that. It's going to be secured away. But yes, this is a desirable Holy Grail guitar. Right, something that's become part of the guitar lexicon, guitar memes, is now referred to as the forbidden riff, which is literally playing Stairway to Heaven in Guitar Center or a guitar store. And that joke is that at one point, everyone could play a little bit of Stairway to Heaven. So the employees at the music store got really sick of always hearing the same riff all the time. I would say the closest thing to a forbidden riff right now would be a tie between Smoke on the Water and Wonderwall. This scene checks out. Now, I will say that Mike Myers doesn't really play guitar, but that's really beside the point. He is a guitar enthusiast, rock and roll enthusiast. But just for the humor and what it's done to pop culture, absolutely authentic.
Loosen your fingers a little bit. Like this.
So Antonio Banderas does play guitar in this film, but just from my eye, I can tell that the recording you're hearing is not perfectly matching up to what he's doing. But he does a very good job of looking at especially what Spanish guitar players do and flamenco and mariachi guitar players, which is very based on that right hand finger picking, as opposed to what, more of a rock guitar player would do, which is using a pick like this. The exercise he's talking about with the child, you wouldn't ever hear a guitar teacher do that, but basically what he's showing him is like a right hand pattern, and you can just assign different strings to different fingers and create a pattern. So if I took a minor chord, you can get things like this. He's playing nylon string guitar, which is what you get with Spanish guitar and classical guitar. It has a softer sounding quality to it. This scene checks out. My favorite little element of it is actually at the end when he just twirls it as if he plays guitar or has played guitar for years and years and years. So yes, authentic. Looks like he's kind of discovering the guitar. He's discovering that he can just look at a guitar and play it because of his musical ability. But you can't just grab a guitar, put it in an alternate tuning, and also play a style that is very unique, which is a acoustic slapping style. You typically tune your guitar to an open chord. So that way, no matter if you just strum it without your left hand, you're hearing a chord. That way, you can now focus. So Freddie Highmore studied guitar for this movie. He looked great. I mean, he was matching up the playing. And the original playing in this movie is Kaki King, an amazing female prodigy that plays solo acoustic. I can tell it's Kaki King because she uses an effect called delay, usually a separate pedal. So when you put the delay pedal on, you get echoes. And you can control how many echoes you want and how far apart they are spaced. So you get a rhythm to it. not offended by this clip. It's just not realistic. All right, finally, we have a scene that to me does not check out. Not very authentic, not very realistic, but it doesn't mean it's bad. All right, those were all super fun clips. I am personally reminded how much I love playing guitar as well as teaching guitar. And I am a movie geek as well. So we're kind of combining all these things that I love. And this was just a blast. All right, thanks for watching these scenes with me. If you want to learn more about guitar or learn guitar itself, you can check out my YouTube channel, Marty Music. Hope to see you there. And scene.